Hi, Amy.
Hi, Sheba.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be doing this right now. Bruno's going to keep interrupting us, but that's okay. Bruno, you want to say hi to everyone?
Bruno, we're on the camera. You want to say hi?
Can you just lay down, buddy? We'll crop this later.
Sure. All right. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Sheba.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you in Washington,
Good
D.C.
to see you, too.
Such a small world. We were just in Rwanda, and gorgeous, beautiful, incredible Rwanda.
I miss it.
I miss it, for sure. It's good that it's getting warmer in D.C., though. So
It's true. The weather's better
easier.
here. They do try to spend. People are like, some people winter in Florida, I winter in Rwanda.
Yes, yes. So I wanted us to talk about this incredible project of CoKiyovu. Can we share a little bit about that?
For sure.
Because when I was in Rwanda, I saw the compound, the CoKiyovu compound. It's just absolutely
It's a magical space.
It is, truly. So you're Amy Pritchard. Maybe you can just say a few things about yourself, and
Sure.
And then we'll start. Yeah.
Sure. Amy Pritchard. I am a political consultant and entrepreneur for democracy. Work both here in the United States, and I've worked globally all over the world. And that's actually how I first went to Rwanda.
Yes.
I went there for the first time in 2011 with an organization called NDI, National Democratic Institute. I have worked for them in over 25 countries, actually. But Rwanda stole my heart, and I have made it a home since then. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing in democracy around the world. That is
Needed more
critically
now than
important.
ever.
Absolutely. And you've spent decades really fighting for women's leadership and advocacy and all these wonderful things. So tell me, why would you say that Rwanda is uniquely positioned to lead in women's leadership?
So I will say, going back to when I first went to Rwanda, to be honest, I knew nothing about the country. I knew very little about the continent. And of course, I did some research before I went. And one of the first things I learned about it was that it was the first country to get majority women in the parliament. And I was fascinated, just like, how did that even happen? How was that possible? Why this little country, And I started doing some research. There was some research that had been done by a woman named Elizabeth Powley, and she worked for Swanee Hunt at the time. And they had done a lot of research on how it happened. So I read that, and of course I got to meet some amazing women when I got there. One of the first women I met was now former minister. She was a senator at the time, and unfortunately passed away. But it was Alois Zanumba, and she shared her story, and I just learned a lot about the commitment of the country to gender equality, to gender equity, and a lot about the women who just built the country. Again, Swanee Hunt actually wrote a book about it called Rwanda Women Rising. And my passion has always been more women in office. I managed my first, I took you to an Emily's List event.
Yes, it was fantastic.
And my background, back to the domestic work, I've worked to help elect women most of my career. My first race was my first big campaign. Actually, it wasn't my first women's race, but was in 1994 when the genocide was happening. I managed a campaign for a woman named Lynn Rivers, who ran for Congress and won, and that was a year that Democrats lost the House for the first time in decades, actually. And we did that with the help of Emily's List. And Emily's List just is celebrating its 40th anniversary right now. And so I've been active with the organization ever since then. And there's another organization called Emerge that I'm a big advocate for as well. And I started just doing a little bit of research and realized that there really weren't these kind of organizations that we have here in the U.S. in many places around the world, including Rwanda, even though there had been a lot of success there. Going back to when I was there in 2011, I was actually there for a youth program. Again, another thing I love about Rwanda, though, no matter what they do, there's always equity. And so it was half women and half men, because that was a mandate. Yeah, there's essentially quotas in everything, every part of Rwanda's society that is both official and even unofficial, because it sort of adapts from it, right? So, and it's funny because I feel like here in the U.S. and maybe other places in the world, we've sort of made words like quotas sound like they're a bad thing, when in fact they're amazing. Right. All they do is essentially guarantee representation, right?
So important.
Right. So I just sort of became fascinated with that, but also learned that there was still a long way to go. And I think that's true, again, in most countries. Women are still, in so many ways, don't have the same valued space in society, whether it's cultural, whether it's political. So there were programs that we wanted to do then with NDI, and for a long, I won't go into all the details, but for a lot of reasons, unfortunately, they did not happen then, but I became really interested in women's programs then. A little bit later, a few years later, and I'll jump back and forth in time some, but I joined the board of a college, actually, called the Kigali Institute for Women, and I had met some women who had started and had become a volunteer and a donor, and then I joined their board. And that's how I got connected to a lot of the young women in Rwanda, and met so many of them. So
exciting. I am Rwandan. I was actually born in Uganda, neighboring country, and didn't get to Rwanda until after the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. And so, as you're talking of, 1994, you were, running your first campaign. 1994, I was graduating from high school. And just really seeking to know more about my culture and background. I grew up in the U.S. I came here as a refugee at the age of 1.5, actually. And so to see someone who is, not a native Rwandan, who is so committed to seeing how women's voices can be heard, why our presence matters in boardrooms and in leadership, is so inspiring. And so, so that is one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that people knew about CoKiyovu, because I do a lot of work in the Rwandan diaspora, but a lot of Rwandans don't know how they can participate and how they can be a part. And so I think that CoKiyovu is one opportunity
it is.
that
Yeah,
everybody
for sure.
can be a part. So, so if you could maybe tell us a little bit about, what will CoKiyovu be? Like, what's your vision for it?
Sure.
And how that is what inspired you?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the answer in a few parts. So back to the story I was just sharing. And so CoKiyovu is a space in Kiyovu, the neighborhood Kiyovu. For Rwandans know it very well.
Yes.
For those who don't, it is, it's, adjacent and part of what typically is called downtown. It's one of the oldest neighborhoods in Kigali. And the president lived in it till very recently. He actually just moved, but he was right down the street. And it has the biggest hotels. The Marriott's right down the street, walking distance. Serena, there's a 4 Points now. Again, the main downtown office buildings are there, and then just a really beautiful residential neighborhood that we're part of. And we're really we're adjacent to Yamirambo, which is the next neighborhood over, which is a very different neighborhood, but equally amazing in just different ways. It's really vibrant and diverse. And lively. It's probably the most lively neighborhood in Kigali. Yeah, I love Yamarambo, and I love where we are. We're also literally just across the street from KIST, which is the Kigali Institute for Science and Technology. So we have a college, we have Yamarambo, we have downtown. It's just this amazing location, and without getting into all the gory details, but I've actually rented it for 10 years. I like to think of myself as a steward of the property. And over that time, I started off renting one house. There's actually 3 houses. And again, without getting into all the long details, I just fell in love with the space and started to find ways. It's owned by, back to the process we're in right now, it's owned by a family that's been in their family for generations before the war. They left, the family parents left during the war, or I don't know exactly the dates, but sometime, and their family is actually spread all over the world right now. There are 3 members still in Rwanda, and they want to sell. And so I've been given this opportunity to purchase the land that I've been renting and managing. Like I said, I've been a sort of a steward of this land for a decade now. And obviously over a decade I've really fallen in love with it. And for some of the reasons I just explained, but many others, it's almost a full acre. Or no, sorry, it's more than it. It's a full hectare. Yes, I was gonna say it's 2 acres, much bigger. It's huge. And it feels like you're, it almost feels like you're in Nyungwe when you're in the middle of the city, right? It's just beautiful trees and amazing space. We built a, well, I call it the yoga studio, but it's a big, kind of bungalow, open space, event space. And it's been used by a lot of organizations. During the pandemic, so I've been using it as Airbnbs for the most part. And during the pandemic, back to Aquila, many students had their internships canceled, but an internship was a mandate for to graduate. And so the board had a meeting, and we really wanted to find a way to help the students graduate. And so I had this space. I was actually back here in the States, locked down in this very house. I said, well, I have this nonprofit I started, which is called Global Gain. I started it for some other reasons, which I'll come back to, but just the story of what's happening at the compound right now. And Aquila at the time was right down the street too, downtown. So I had this space and I had this nonprofit I had started. So I offered to take some of the girls, because it couldn't just be a internship, it had to be in person, and there was more to it. But we created this program on the fly, no concept, no dedicated funding, nothing. But I had an idea that came from some other things that I can get into another day as well. But I had some inspiration, and I was used to teaching. And in fact, I was teaching a program to women in Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. I was running a program remotely at that point for women in 4 other countries. And so I basically took what I was teaching there and started to teach the women in Rwanda, the students. But I taught them to essentially use Global Gain as their vehicle to do social media, to do storytelling, to do videos like this, right? To help build their confidence. And we use other women as the content of these stories, right? So I started off by just asking them simple things like write a story, write a post about a woman you admire, and some did their own mothers, and some did Jeanette Kagame, and other, and we started getting into just women's storytelling and their own storytelling. And I taught them a lot of digital skills and database building and all sorts of stuff. And the program started 3 months, and it went to 6 months, and then it went longer, and none of them wanted to stop. And so I finally said, well, we should have more women in part of this if you want to keep doing it. So the original women in this group, actually, a subset of them, I told them I would support them if they wanted to set up their own organization, because, by the way, we weren't technically operating as legally as we should. It was a funky time. I don't think anyone would have.
Pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Pandemic was an excuse for a lot of things, but I said, if we're going to do this, we need to do it properly. So we created a local NGO, and that's called Women Gain Rwanda. And the women in that group, they named themselves in the Global Gain Intwari Women. So that's the program name. And they're actually in the midst now of their 3rd cohort. into our
Stay.
women, and they're
Yes.
running it now, and it's all on the compound. So that's happening as we speak. There are other organizations that use the compound. There's several other. I couldn't even tell you all of them. They have actually really worked with a group of. They had an amazing network from Aquila already, and then through the process of starting the NGO, they've worked with a lot of other groups as well. And we just offer the space to other groups to use for their events. We have another NGO that just does yoga, and they do yoga on the compound. They're amazing. There's actually two guys, but they're supported by another
so cool.
yoga teacher, and they teach, and they do these community classes, which is really nice because they're really into teaching Rwandans yoga.
Yes.
And so that's really amazing. But we've had weddings on the compound. We've had all sorts of different kind of cultural events. And we work with, Rwanda's the most organized country I've ever seen. It's literally organized down to what here in the States we would call the precinct level. There, as you know, is called Umudugudu, right? And they have governance down to that level. And so we're still even in the process. You have to, you start to register an NGO at the Rwandan Governance Board. But then you have to start back down to the Umudugudu and get approval all the way up. But that process has been pretty amazing because they give you support, and they come to visit, and they get invested in the work themselves, and then they've introduced other people. We did International Women's Day event in Yamarango, and then some of the women came over, and it's just become a community space. Which has just been beautiful to watch organically. So what we really want to do is turn that into something more, something better. Maybe the houses are quite honestly very dilapidated and not great. So our goal with CoKiyovu is to obviously first acquire the land, and then to build it, to develop it. We want to maintain what I call the beauty of the space, right? So we're not going to overdevelop it. But we want to continue to have places for people to stay. Like I said, we've been running Airbnbs now. I love meeting all the people who come from all over the world. We have a lot of medical professionals who come. They come as teachers to either KIST or to teaching hospital, Sayashka, which isn't far. So we want to have a space that people could come and stay. One, it's a revenue stream, but it's also just we want people to be able to come and actually do work on the compound or work nearby. We want to have retreats. We want to have partnerships with other universities. I've gotten to know groups who have come from Columbia, from Harvard, from Carnegie Mellon. There's already a lot of universities that have exchange programs, so we want to build up some more official partnerships with some of them. Back to my work here in the States, I want to bring over women, and back to really kind of the whole purpose is teaching, certainly teaching young women in Rwanda to be leaders themselves. Back to sort of the Emily's List model. My dream is to have them all run for office, but really I want them just to be leaders, and so whatever that means, I can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can manifest through business, it can manifest through other NGO work, it can certainly manifest in a lot of ways, but ultimately I want them all to understand that they can be leaders, right? So that's a big piece of it, but I also want other women and people, again, I shouldn't say just women, men too, anyone to come to learn about the story of Rwandan women, because I think when you do go back to the genocide and then you look at where it is today, and obviously it still has a long way to go, but it's extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. And I don't know how many countries I've been to, but 30 or 40, somewhere in that range, and it's just, it's like nothing I've ever seen. And I think it's an important story for others to learn as well. So I've already brought lots of women and other people, and I don't know anyone who doesn't leave just blown away by it. So right now I'm so focused on my democracy work here in the States for some obvious reasons, but this is so woven into it really because I'm trying to create cross-border connections, and so that's a big part of the story too.
Thank you for sharing that. So we want to be able to recognize the history of women in Rwanda, tell that story, we use the term museum.
Yep.
In terms of being able to preserve that history, not just for even us Rwandans in diaspora, we don't know all the history of women in
we certainly don't know our own stories here too, so we all have a lot to learn from those who came before us.
Yes. And then you talk about co-working spaces. I went to an incredible co-working space in Rwanda, and I was just like, you know, when I go to Kigali, it's like, it's not any different from any other American city, to be honest. Even better, more organized in many ways. Very organized, right? But the fact that they give space for youth to lead, right? When you think about the cabinet, you think about the leadership of the country, very young, very open to being able to have that diversity in leadership, which I think a lot when we, you know, Africa's so young, you know, with the average age of 19, so there's so much potential, right? And if we could be that incubator of leadership and professional training and empowerment, so we have a very specific goal right now, right? Because the incredible work that's being done on the compound, as you said, that land and that property is being rented, and so there's an opportunity right now to acquire that land. So can you speak a little bit about that opportunity?
I'm very anxious but excited about it.
So time sensitive.
Bruno's kicking the camera. I mean, we the family is going through the process to sort of distribute the assets. Their mother passed away a few years ago. And so, you know, as the renter and as a person connected to the family, we have this unique time to purchase it before they decide to put it on the open market. So it's very time sensitive. We just have a couple months. And that's obviously just to acquire the land. That's not the development. Of course, we'll have more time for that. But, you know, as I said, for a variety of reasons that have to do with proximity to the university, to Yamarambo, to the hotels, it's really just strategically an incredible location. It's not like we couldn't do this someplace else, but I can't imagine a place that would have all of that with it. And so, you know, I fully admit to having a personal attachment, having spent so much time on this space, but it's because of that I understand its potential too, right? And so, and then watching, you just referenced a co-working space. I assume you're talking about Norskin.
Yes, Norskin.
There's some other spaces, but Norskin is a new space, and it's worth mentioning because it's part of the inspiration. And honestly, seeing its success, right? It's actually, my understanding is it's sold out. You know, there's a wait list to get access to it. Norskin is a Swedish, I think, organization. And it was built to be a co-working space for entrepreneurs, and it's been incredibly successful. It has co-working. It doesn't have living space, but it has a restaurant and event space, and you can have permanent office or hot desks, you know. So we have similar idea. Our space isn't quite as big, although it's very big. But I really wanted to do something that was women-centric, not women-exclusive, but women-centric. And back to the museum piece of it. You know, there was a conference a few years ago, 2023. Women Deliver had this amazing conference. They had thousands of women from all over the world come to Kigali, and they've written up why they chose Rwanda and why Kigali. But that was partly, at that time, there was a piece of their conference was this exhibit that Kavina Till Kavina did that shared the story of Rwandan women. And afterwards, I asked, I'm like, so what's happening to this exhibit? And they didn't have any place to put it.
Oh, wow.
And so I started asking some folks who were involved, and I was like, what if we had a space? Could we use it? So that was, and it's still, by the way, a couple of years later, still sitting in storage. They haven't found a permanent home for it. So that was one part of it. And then I already mentioned Swanee Hunt's book, Rwanda Women Rising, you know, which is an incredible book. I'm friends with a number of the women in it, and they're certainly part of this story as well. But I thought, what if we brought that book, this exhibit, to life?
Yes.
You know, what if we created, you know, there are only a few museums. Back to Kigali, it's still, I think it's a very developing city. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
it's like, as you say, it's like a different city every time we go back because it is developing so much. But there's really only a couple museums. There's obviously the Genocide Memorial. There is a art museum that's quite small. And
I
there's
went
a
to
couple
the
of,
Kant Museum when I was there as well, a German based off of colonial history. Of the
yeah,
country.
so there are a couple, but not that many.
Yeah.
And there really isn't a dedicated space for women. And so I thought, well, the country that has so much focus on gender equity and women's leadership needed a space to tell the story of the women's history. So that's a big piece of the idea. That is CoKiyovu. You know, it's funny, we named CoKiyovu just obviously for the neighborhood and the notion of which is community, collaboration, coordination, co-working, co-living.
Yes.
It's really just bringing things together. So we didn't use a genderized word in the name of it, but we have Women Gain Rwanda as a part of it. And we really just want it to be a space that that shares the story to both Rwandans and to visitors about the women's journey, both through the war, before the war, through the war, and through today.
Yes.
And so we'll have a gallery, and the idea is also to have just sort of women's stories built into the whole space. You know, maybe naming each room after a different woman. I don't know. We're still working on some of these details, but that's certainly the idea.
Awesome. So exciting. And so we have a goal of $650,000 by July the 6th.
Yes.
And that is something that we want to make sure people know that if they value all of these wonderful things that you're talking about that are so much needed, that we need to establish connection and partnership and share this information and story. So how can people contribute? What can be done, and how are we looking to be able to build that community for CoKiyovu?
So currently, we've created CoKiyovu itself is a community benefit corporation, CBC, which essentially is a social enterprise. It's a kind of a hybrid between a company and a NGO in Rwanda. They're pretty new there. They've only been around a couple of years. So, so we've incorporated that as the primary vehicle that will purchase the land. And we did that for a couple of reasons. We wanted it to be an entity that was flexible, that could take investment from a few different types of entities, that could generate revenue and profit, but also was not built for that. Right? That our real goal is to have this be something that is sustainable. We need to have revenue come into it to sustain, obviously to create it and then to sustain it over time.
Right.
And then here in the U.S., I mentioned now a few times that I started this NGO. It's called Global Gain, and I've gotten support from my board to use Global Gain as a vehicle as well. So we can raise money here in the United States through Global Gain.
Yes.
And then Global Gain will be an equity owner of CoKiyovu.
Yes.
But we're open to other ideas as well. So if others wanted to come in as some form of a partner, whether it's an individual, organization, another NGO, we really created it to be as flexible as possible. But it, we're really only looking for investors who sort of share the vision.
Yes.
You know, I've had some others interested in doing some other things in this space, and at least for now, I'm sort of putting them off because I really want people who are invested in this idea. So we can do it. You know, we could certainly take other equity investors who have some other ideas that are related. But right now, the easiest way to contribute is through Global Gain here in the U.S.
Yes.
Or you could contribute to Women Gain. They will continue to be an important part of it. Women Gain Rwanda in Rwanda. Or direct investing in CoKiyovu, the CBC in Rwanda. So there are a couple different direct ways to invest, and honestly, I'd want to have a conversation with folks about what made most sense for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we
But
have flexibility.
we'll take $5 and 500,000, right?
Absolutely.
And we really do want to crowdfund because we want to. We've created a series of levels and sort of benefits that go with each level.
Yes.
So there's naming opportunities, and I'm sure we'll have a donor wall, and
Yes.
that sort of thing to make sure that the people who do invest are given credit for it, and there'll be a lot more investment opportunity over time in the development. But the immediate goal is this land acquisition.
Absolutely.
We have invested already in an architect to start giving us some concepts and designs. Very excited about her. We're also trying to be very intentional on having women be a big part of everything we do.
Yeah.
So. She actually is one of the builders of Norskin, which is how I found her.
She's incredible.
She's amazing. Yeah. So we'll share her story and more as we go. So anyone who wants to learn about what we're doing can go to CoKiyovu.org. It's just a simple website that we set up. We're still adding content.
Yes.
We're still fixing it. It's not 100% today. And then we have a Substack, which is fed into it. That is just for updates and news there, also called CoKiyovu. And so anyone can visit that. We'll share more on social as well, but those are the main places to learn. And obviously reach out to us, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm excited. I really am super excited about it. I'm anxious. It's a lot. It's ambitious. One of my favorite quotes that is a real inspiration to me, and it's an inspiration for everything we do, and I may get it wrong exactly, but it was from President of Liberia, I think she was the first woman president on the continent.
Yeah.
Honorable Ellen Sirleaf Johnson. She says that the size of your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. And that is definitely, Bruno, a big part of our inspiration. So it's really, that's a big part of what we're trying to do. It's not just dream big ourselves, but teach everyone to dream big, right? To realize that they can have big, audacious, crazy dreams and make them come true.
Absolutely. If your goals are not if they don't scare you, they're not big enough.
Exactly.
Right? Should we pause?
Okay.
Okay, he's good.
Bruno. Like I said, I can't put him on airplane mode.
No, it's all good. But I think that, to dream boldly, to think positively, is what we've seen from the leadership from President Paul Kagame.
Yeah.
And people will tell you can't do anything, and it's he who thinks he can and who thinks he can't are equally right. So that is a philosopher. So we can if we collectively come together. And I think that that's the idea that we're building here.
Yeah.
Of being able to actually create an advisory council. And the advisory council, we would want that to be made up of a diverse group. And so maybe can you speak a little bit about what that initiative is right now for us as we're recruiting and, finding like-minded people to join the International Advisory Council?
We are launching an advisory council. I'm calling it council. It's not a governing board, although we do have a governing board, but or at least we have a governing board in CoKiyovu and Global Gain, etc. And we really want all kinds of people to be part of it. We certainly want Rwandans in Rwanda and Rwandans in diaspora. But also any person who is interested in this idea. If I want to dream even bigger, I see this as something that could be franchised and brought to other places. So, and I'm looking to learn from people who have done some similar things. We've been doing a lot of research on women's centers. There's very few. There's really nothing quite like what we're building here. But we need people who are, again, are committed to the cause and have different skill sets and different resources. Obviously, we're looking to raise money, so anyone who's able to contribute or give is welcome, but it's certainly not a quid pro quo in that sense. I don't want to scare people off who don't have financial resources, but have other ways to contribute in their time and in their thoughts and in their advice, you know, whether it's recommending other people, whether it's recommending resources. At some point there'll be other ways to be engaged in the storytelling and the museum curation, right? I mean, there's so many different ways to be part of this. And so at least initially, the biggest thing we're looking for is essentially a testimonial, an endorsement, if you will, right? Just as sort of thumbs up, stamping like this is a good idea, you know, because this is, to sort of use another cliche, this is going to take a village, right? And so we need to build that village right now. And so I'm a big believer in, that's where the word co, really building community, using community. Obviously I'm an American woman, so it's sort of audacious of me to even suggest I could do something like this, but I want to honestly not play a very front-facing role. This is a little bit uncomfortable for me even doing this. You're pushing me. I am much more, I'm always a behind-the-scenes person, really. That's why I've never run for office. I am always behind the scenes in my political work too. I don't say that because I'm shy or anything, but I really want this to be more Rwandan facing. And so, but again, there's space for anyone. I don't care if you're American, Rwandan, you know, someone else from another country who wants to see something like this happen. Rwanda has a lot of supporters. Yes. And a lot of people, I don't know anyone who's visited Rwanda and hasn't been transformed by it, and doesn't feel a part of it in leaving. Yes. You know? Yes. And I've traveled a lot and I don't feel that about all the other countries. So it is something magical there. It's a tiny little country, but it really is extraordinary. Yes. And so you said this, but I think, you know, this is a great place for Rwandans in diaspora to feel connected to the country, and to be part of building something that really carries the past, but is beautiful in the future, you know, and supports the young women. And again, men, like I said, I don't want this to just be for women, even though it's women-centric. Yes. You know, creates a space that really, like I said, carries the history, but helps women thrive. Right. And continue to build the country.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, you know, just thinking about diaspora, like you said, you know, as if someone wants to be able to transition to maybe looking at opportunities in Rwanda, one, you need to have an operating space. So most recently when I was in Rwanda and I was, you know, having various business meetings, and I was able to go to Norskin and be able to have that facility available. And so for others to know that there are options like that, where they can actually find accommodation, and they can, you know, gradually find their path, because it's a transition from living in the U.S. to being in a foreign country, even if technically it's your home, right? Yeah. And so I do think that there is such a big need for that to kind of be the landing point for a lot of people who are looking to see what is Rwanda all about, and to be located right in the heart of Kigali in a prime neighborhood like CoKiyovu is also such a huge plus. Yeah. And so when we think about how CoKiyovu complements Rwanda's national goals of sustainability, equity, and innovation, how do you see CoKiyovu playing that role?
Well, one of the things I love about Rwanda, and one of the things I wish this country and many others would follow, is the idea of having real goals and, you know, that are measurable and attainable and reachable for everyone at every level, right? They don't just talk about goals. They're very literal, you know, like they're documented. Yes. So they had Vision 2020, now there's Vision 2030, there's a Vision 2050, exactly. So, and there are parts of that are uniquely Rwandan, but there are also big parts of it that are built into the UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? And so it's amazing here, by the way, in the US, how few people even know what the UN Sustainable Development Goals are. So that's a whole nother thing, but gender equality is one of them. Yes. And I can't rattle them all off the top of my head, but they're everything from, you know, alleviating poverty, exactly, education, health, climate. Right. And there's a piece of all of that built into this. So obviously gender equality is a piece of it. That's a big one. That's what I would call our primary. But, you know, you talk about youth in this country, the biggest need right now is jobs. Let's be honest, right? Sure. Economic opportunity. Yeah. So number one, we're going to be creating jobs just by building the space and the people who run it. So we'll be creating jobs right there. But also through the programs that we do, and we do this already. Again, Women Gain Rwanda does some of this. We really will have like a professional development space. Even my last trip, I'm constantly doing career counseling, right? So having that part of it is going to be really important. There's other ideas, they're not fully formed, I will say, but like having, for example, we'll have a restaurant, you know, I think teaching sustainability or having opportunities for hospitality, right? So this will be a tourist destination, but also a job creation, and having space to teach, like we did a cooking class, we've done sewing class, and you know, that's important to know because there's different economic status, right? And so we're trying to create opportunities for all economic status, not just for one. And that also gets deeper into the community and creating more economic opportunity. So that's very much part of it. I think there's a lot of different ways. I don't pretend to have all the ideas here, by the way. I think that's why we're looking for others to be part of it, because I know other people will have other ideas. I know some of the young women there, a couple women are really interested in fashion. They want to have a fashion shop there. You know, we'll have different sort of small kind of pop-up shops there to showcase some of the crafts and things. So there'll be a lot of different pieces to it that I think get to the various goals. But economic opportunity, I think, is the most important one. You know, if they can't work, they can't do anything. And Kigali is growing. There's housing issues. There's all sorts of, it's actually a very expensive city. And so we really need to create job opportunities, not just on the compound itself, but teaching them how to find their career. So when I talk about dreaming, I'm really talking about just like finding your way in this world, and learning your passions, and then, because I think that's so connected to the economic opportunities that you have. You know, that's a lot of what we teach already. You know, like I said, my passion is seeing women run for office, so I never hide it, but I really want them to know that whatever their passions are, they can find their way. And that's built into the NGO programs that we do.
Yeah. And I think that that's so critical for people to also understand that CoKiyovu is not like a theory. This is there's already a foundation that has been laid through the NGO, through Women Gain Rwanda, here in the US, Global Gain, which is a nonprofit.
Yeah, we're not starting from scratch.
Absolutely. So we're already in an opportunity where we can build off of a great foundation, but we can also expand so much. And I think that that's where we need partnership, that's where we need support, that's where we need to raise awareness. So whether it's someone just sharing a video like this to be able to help to promote about what is being done for CoKiyovu, learning about Global Gain and learning about Women Gain Rwanda, because I really want to applaud you for your heart, for wanting to be able to be a woman of impact, and you continue to do that. So thank you. for just believing in women and even, you know, encouraging me to, you know, to pursue some of my ambitions in leadership. And I truly am very excited to have an opportunity to see you in all of your glory, to be able to make an impact both at home and abroad.
Thank you.
And so, you know, as we close, just want to say, you know, visit CoKiyovu.org, follow our Substack, but really just if people want to learn more, or people want to get more information, maybe you can just say.
Yeah, I mean, you can reach us through the website. You can email us. We each have Global Gain emails.
Yes.
Amy, just amy@globalgain.org, Sheba@globalgain.org.
Yes.
You know, we're very accessible, and particularly for anyone who wants to talk about this.
Yes.
For anyone who's got ideas, for anyone who knows someone who might be interested. Like I said, we're going to need a lot of people to pull this off, but I believe we can. I really do, and I think that it's, you know, a place that women will dream and learn to make their dreams come true. That's really like a big part of it. You know, I think you just have to be told that you can do things,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know, and a lot of people aren't. A lot of women in particular aren't. Quite the opposite, they're told they can't.
Right.
You know, and so we keep talking about this being a think and dream tank, you know, or dream and do tank rather than just a think tank.
Yes.
You know, we want it to be a place that really inspires people to think beyond their immediate, you know, environment and to learn how they can be impactful in the world. And so I think that's the most important part of what we do. Like I said, I tend to focus on government and leadership through political means, but that's why I say it could be anything. We just want people to learn how to be impactful, whether it's local, whether it's global. You know, I believe that everyone has an important role to play in making their world better. And this is the place that we're going to teach it.
Absolutely. You
And
know,
learn it.
I absolutely agree. When I was in Rwanda just this past March, and I attended an event, which was actually a breast cancer event. It was through Breast Cancer Initiative East Africa, so a plug for that organization doing incredible work helping to advocate for awareness. And one of the women who was speaking was a representative from a bank, and she was talking about their women empowerment program. And so you talk about sewing, for example. A lot of women or men, for that matter, they might look at trades or different skills as not as maybe as lucrative or respected in various professional industry, and there was a lady who had an idea of being able to start a tailoring business, and she was able to get a small loan from the bank, and she saw women walking along the streets with babies on their back, knowing that maybe they are just gonna come home, maybe made something, maybe not. And she slowly started, you know, bringing those women into her home, and they started learning how to sew, and they grew from 1 to 2 to 10, and now she has a full warehouse in manufacturing site in the industrial zone.
That's amazing.
And so just to think of how many other women like her need a place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To be able to come and learn these skills, but then also to slowly build their little, you know, business, which then can grow to employ tens, if not hundreds, maybe even thousands of others in the future. And so I think that is so important, that when we share information, that we support other organizations that are doing great work, and that you become a partner. So hopefully that's what they were able to do with that.
Yeah, we hear stories like that, you know, not enough, but frequently. There was a young woman who was part of one of our cohorts that was, I'm not sure if she was in the cooking or sewing
Mm-hmm.
group, but and I didn't even really get to know her. I met a lot of them kind of as a group, and I didn't spend one-on-one time. And then flash forward, this past Christmas, we did a holiday party, and we invited everyone who had been part of the programs to it. And one of the women, one of the young women came and spoke. She spoke in Rwanda, so I didn't fully understand it.
Yes.
And then another woman got up, and she was actually crying, and I mean, it was happy tears, but she was just so moved, you know. But and she just talked about the impact, and she was an official with the local district government, and had been supporting us through the way. And afterwards, she told me the reason she was so overwhelmed emotionally was this other young woman who stood up and spoke before her. She said she just couldn't believe she could stand up and speak. She had been so introverted, and she was a teen mom. And the other woman had met her through, you know, to help her through something, and she'd been abused and had some other terrible things happen. And she just couldn't believe to see how this woman had come out of her shell and was standing up speaking publicly, and she was like, it was all because of this Women Gain Rwanda program, so it was beautiful.
Oh, where's my art?
Right? So, yeah, and there's so many stories. That's the other thing, visit womengain.org, which is the Women Gain Rwanda website. They share a lot of the individual stories of the women who are in the program right now, which is just fun and beautiful to see.
Yes. So we're going to have an online event on Monday. It is Memorial Day in the U.S., so hopefully you take a break from the burger, or even you could still watch the event
recording later
while they're enjoying their day off. But we want to be able to highlight stories like those, and we'll be having more events. Which would be at the compound as well, for people to see exactly what's happening there. But here in the U.S., we definitely want to raise awareness. So it's great talking to you, Amy. Bless you and continue.
Thank you
God
for
bless
help.
you. And we look forward to more conversations about global gain and CoKiyovu and Women Gain Rwanda.
Thank you.
Take care.
Appreciate your partnership.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so